Today we've got Stephan, who's going to be talking to us about how we can do some unique financing for our businesses and C-suite support. We are fractional CFOs, controllers, and accountants, and we also are joint venture partners with an M&A group, Buy and Build Advisors, that we're going to do hopefully 70 M&A transactions next year is the plan. So we're looking for businesses that want to buy, want to sell, or in this case, they need money to buy additional companies themselves. So with that kind of thought in mind, we're always looking for any way that we can help businesses. And that's where Stephan comes in here. Stephan, you and I met almost a year ago now, and you're part of the Hero Club as well as I am, that Tricia is the head of and takes care of with C-Suite Network. So Stephan, I will say that right. I'm East Texas. Well, really I'm not, but my Texas accent gets me from time to time. So I'll throw that out there. It's a pleasure to have you here. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much, Paul, for having me. And also thank you, Tricia, for the introduction. I'm really looking forward to spend the next time with you. And I'm really curious about all your questions. So a little bit about myself. I started as an entrepreneur 24 years ago. Probably you hear it in my voice. I'm not US. I'm originally from Austria, but I live in the beautiful island of Sardinia in Italy in the meantime, because I don't like the foggy, drizzling autumn weather in Austria at this time. And over the last 24 years, I already built 7 different companies, still running 5 of them. 2 are located in the US, the other 3 are located here in Europe, in Austria. And what we are doing is, I will get more into that in the future, in the next couple of minutes. So thank you very much for having me.
Well, I appreciate that. We part of the things that we started talking about in that conversation, and you made some presentations to us of what we have the opportunities with if we're in any kind of development, meaning product development, technology development, things of that nature that allow us to do something if our company has any kind of design and build processes, predominantly software, potentially other situations. I've got a nutritional company that says I need some help with R&D for my nutritional products. I'd like to build those out. Someone else has got I need better underwriting criteria. I need to build those out. And you and I got to talking about, well, there are opportunities in Europe for grant money, and tell us about what those opportunities are in general, and then we're going to go a little bit more specific on it. What are those grant opportunities that you and I had the pleasure of talking about?
Absolutely, Paul. Thank you for the question. That's actually a great thing, because I'm using this since a lot of years for my own companies, and we are helping a bunch of people with that already. So one of the things what my company group is doing that I mentioned before is we help entrepreneurs grow and scale their companies. And in this specific area, we have a major focus on everything which is around AI, technology, and innovation. And here, one of our secret sauces, if you want to call it like that, is we can get grants for our customers to cover up to 80% of their project budget. With grants, they do not need to pay back. So that's in general very interesting already, because why are these grants available? These grants are provided by the Austrian government, so it is mandatory to set up a company or use an incubator in Austria, but I can go into more details later on. But the main question is, okay, why is the Austrian government giving away a lot of money? And we are talking about huge amounts of money that they are providing for grants. Pretty easy, because they want to have more companies located in Austria. More companies in Austria means more people are employed in Austria, means the government is earning more tax income. That's their game. And they are actually doing a very good job, because Austria is ranked amongst the top 5-6 countries worldwide to set up, for example, your tech headquarter or do R&D projects. And on the other hand side, they are not marketing a lot in this area. And this is where we come in. So my business partner and I, we are doing this since over 20 years, and we are applying for 1 to 2 grants per day for our customers already. So to give you a little bit overview, so the project size we have under management is between 220K up to 25 million in annual project budgets. And you can guess, Paul, if you can get 80% of these project budgets covered with grants you do not need to pay back, that's a pretty nice deal. And what we are doing, or basically the main areas where we are supporting customers, are in 3 different buckets. So one major bucket you already mentioned. So everything around AI, technology, software, SaaS platforms, IT solutions. So that's one of the things. On the other hand side, we have a lot of biotech companies under management. So what are they doing? They need research, they need scientific background, trials, and a lot of things in this space. And the third bucket is where everything is around environmental impact and sustainability. So, for example, renewable energy, improving energy production, energy storage, and things like that. So these are the 3 main buckets. But again, I can tell you a lot more about that. And I also would like to share a couple of specific examples on why and how specific companies in the US are using these opportunities already.
All right. Well, I'm going to take that into kind of the 30,000 foot down to a 5,000 foot, and let's talk briefly about that kind of a situation. We have a client that is an EV client. They produce charging stations similar to Tesla, and they do a lot of that in the United States. They're very interested in doing this in Europe as well. And right now, they have a group of software that they have to combine from multiple different companies. Very expensive for them, as well as the coordination of it is sometimes tricky. So I've been talking to them about this. They are extremely interested in looking at a grant. So in their particular case, they want software that'll allow a car to know where the next charging station is, know of the availability, make a reservation, go in and work with that, and then needless to say, all the technology around processing, billing, and everything else is there. Take me through, how would you approach that company? And if they're going to do $400 million worth of construction this next 24 months, and in the process spend probably $3 million in cost to try to do that with third party that they want to build out, that'll probably take them $5 million in software build out. Use that kind of as an example of how that can fit into the process that you do.
That's a perfect example, actually, Paul, and especially because this example would fit in both buckets. So in the software IT AI bucket, and in the sustainability environmental impact because of the energy storage. Yeah. So in this case, we could even go after 2 different grant programs or opportunities. So typically it takes about 4 months to apply for a grant, and then it takes about 3 months to get it approved. So what is happening in the first period? In the first period of time, we are working on 2 different areas with the company. In the first area, we are working directly on the grant application. So the first thing what we are going to do is we want to understand the project and the need, what they need to develop, how much budget they need, how much effort they need to put into it, how long the time is, and all these things. And based on that, we are going to search for the ideal grant program. Why is this important? Because in Austria, we have dozens of different grant agencies, and they are providing in a total of over 6,000 different grants. Yes, you heard it right, over 6,000 different grants. So that's where we come in, because if you don't know the system, if you don't know where to start, you are just lost in translation in all these opportunities. So we figure out what is the right grant program. then we provide the customer with exactly the right templates and with exactly the right documents. And the customer just fills out the documents, send it over, we give them a review, and 2 or 3 times back and forth, and then we are done with these documents. That's basically the first thing what we do. The second thing is we also help with the organizational structure. So I mentioned before, these grants are provided from the Austrian government. So it is mandatory that this project runs somehow through Austria. And there are two opportunities. Either the customer wants to set up an own company in Austria, which is like an LLC type of company, or you can use an incubator. This is actually a company what I'm running also with Trisha and Jeff together. So that's the Summit Technology Lab. And so we have my business partner and friend even here on the call, Trisha. And this is what we are doing in the technology lab. So if the customer don't want to set up his own entity in Austria, then he can use the technology lab and run the project with the grants through an incubator, if you want to call it like that. Yeah. Yeah, and then we just apply for that, and then the grant agency takes about 3 months to get the documents and the grants approved. The good thing is, though, when they have the grant approved, they get most of the money already sent to their bank account, so they do not need to pre-finance the development budget. And you probably have a big question in your head already. I see it at least in your eyes. So how successful is this? And does it make sense to do that? Yeah, right. So do we get all the grants approved in the first place? No, we don't. But we get 80% of all the grants approved immediately. So what is happening with this one grant application we do not get approved immediately? That's totally on our risk. So we continue to work with the customer until we have the grant approved. So at the end of the day, we are not allowed to guarantee that somebody is going to get the grants because we are not the government, we are not the decision maker of the grant agency. But at the end of the day, my business partner and I, we have a 100% success rate in Austria, because worst case scenario, if the customer don't get it approved in the first round, it don't take 8 months, but it may take 10 months to get the grants approved and to have the working capital in his company.
Outstanding. Well, obviously you took it exactly where it's going to go, because that's when I'm talking, and I have been talking with several, you've been out of pocket and I've been busy. So you don't have them all lined up yet, but you got the first one we're going to do tomorrow. And I probably have close to half a dozen already that have had conversations in different environments. And they are interested in, okay, what do I have to do? So tell me, kind of in general, in a couple of minutes here, okay, I'm going to borrow, pardon, I'm not borrowing anything. I'm going to be looking for a grant, and I decide I want to go through the incubator. Well, let's step back. I'm going to go through setting up my own company. Tell me the good of setting up my own company, and tell me the benefit of using an incubator.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So very important, whatever I'm going to tell you in the next couple of minutes, this is just a very general overview, and this is going to be very specific for every single project. So I cannot give you a final answer, and I cannot give you a final process for this specific thing, because now we are not on a 5,000 foot level. We are suddenly on a 3 foot level. So we are already very much into details here. And as you can imagine, this is very specific, what type of grant it is, what the company is all about, where they are going to set it up in Austria, what grant program. So dozens of different question marks, but I'm happy to share an example on how this could look like. Okay?
All right. Well, I'm looking for that, because if I want to set up my own company, I understand there is a major process of setting up a business plan, 40 to 50 page business plan, and all of the details for setting the company up, versus if I go through the incubator, who has already done that, Trish Ben, Jeffrey Hazlitt, somebody like that, then it's different. So tell me about setting up my company with the 40 to 50 page business plan. as compared to going through the incubator.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the two opportunities, first opportunity is you need to set up your own company. And the company type is called Flexco, which is actually the same like an LLC in the US. The main difference, though, to an LLC in the US is it is a little bit more complicated, but much more expensive to set up a company like that in Austria. Because when I set up my two companies in the US, I was amazed. I needed a credit card and internet access in 20 minutes, and my LLC was up and running. In Austria, not that easy. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks. You need a lawyer and a notary to get all these things done, and it costs about 5K to set up this so-called Flexco. Yeah. So in this Flexco, you also have a second thing what you need to be aware of, because in Austria, we are differentiating between the CEO and the managing director of the company and the managing director under trade law of this company. And the managing director under trade law, for this person, it is mandatory to have a citizenship either from Austria or from the European Union. So there are multiple opportunities how you can play that. The easiest one is the project or the company has somebody on his team who is a European Union citizen or an Austrian citizen. Then it's very easy, very straightforward, and you can just start with the process and set up the company. If you do not have somebody on your team, we are happy to open up our network and bring one of our 28 organizations and partners in. They are all involved for these grant programs anyway, and we are going to help you connect you with the right managing director under trade law. The third version is if somebody wants to relocate to Austria and wants to live there in the future and wants to have his citizenship, he can do that, though I do not recommend that because it's a very long process and it's not sure that it will work out at the end of the day. Yeah, but these are basically the opportunities when you want to set up your company. In every single step, we are going to guide and provide you through the whole step, through the whole process. Yeah. Easiest way again to wrap it up, you want to set up your LLC type in Austria. It's called Flexco. To do that, you need to have a managing director under trade law who is a European Union citizen, and then it's a very straightforward process. For that, you also need to have a financial forecast and a business plan. This is what you mentioned before. So that's a company setup, typically. Now, when you don't want to go through all these steps I just mentioned, there is basically an easier way. And that's basically the easier way with the incubator, with the technology lab. Then the technology lab is basically doing the project for you and using the grants. So you do not need to do anything of all the things I just mentioned. No company setup, no business plan, no financial forecast, no managing director, nothing. We can directly jump into the grant application documents and directly start with the grant application, and you are set.
All right, and is there anything gained or lost by using the incubator that I would have had different or better the other way?
You are gaining a bunch of time because you are at least saving 4 to 6 weeks, maybe a little bit more. You are also gaining a bunch of time because you don't need to fill out the business plan. You don't need to do the company setup. You don't need to set up a legal entity in Austria. Plus, it is much easier to go through the whole process. What you probably in the long run do not have is when you want to run dozens of own projects through your own entity. Then I would recommend set up your own company because then basically the effort to do that is worth the steps. And you at some point in the future also get into additional tax advantages.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate that. I'm just trying to see if we can do something there. Now,
Mhm.
I want to give you another example in just to get a multiplicity of the kinds of things you can do. Let's go into another client that I've talked to,
Mhm.
and he has a consumer lending company. Now, today, that lending company is primarily in the US and probably prefers to stay in the US. However, he has to build out credit scoring software that is very complicated, very complicated. So he's been doing this on his own with a dozen programmers for the last 2 to 3 years and wants to build it even better and then potentially take that product, license that product, and then have it available for companies anywhere in the U.S. or Europe if they, are interested in that. How would he fall into a category of this to where it's a project that they've been doing for a while, and they probably complete it within a year to 2 years, but every year to 2 years, as you know, in credit scoring, it has to be done again. So it is a constant rinse and repeat process. Take me through how that might fit into your box of tools that you've got to work with that.
Absolutely. That's a great second opportunity or second example here. So in this case, what the customer already have sitting around, we would say this is the MVP. And now the goal of this grant application is we are going to further develop this MVP into a new state of innovation or whatever the end goal is. Okay. So in this case, the easiest path forward is you are using the tech lab as an incubator, as an external R&D location or R&D company. So as an external R&D, we are further developing and maintaining this technology. The customer will always be 100% owner and in control of the IP. That's very important. So we never take ownership or IP rights. We just develop it, but the customer has the IP ownership about it. And then when it is developed, the owner, of course, can monetize it wherever he wants to do it or can license it to other companies.
Well, let me ask you, from what I understand, and you mentioned it earlier, that the objective here is that Austria gets additional employment. So while he's been going to other nations today and in the US, the objective here is he would then turn towards the European Union, towards Austria, and engage Austrian technology people to drive, build AI, build whatever is necessary to build this out. And that's where the employment happens in the country of Austria. And that's where he accomplishes his goal. And one of the questions that will come up, I know you're going to address this and I'll talk about that, is okay, I qualified for a $6 million grant, but I was able to accomplish what I needed to do and I only spent 3. What happens?
So first, let me address the employment. Yeah. So the employment is, yes, we have the talent sitting in Austria, but additionally to that, everybody can also bring his own talent for the project duration. So in this case, the people would just be employed over the duration of the project, because you mentioned in this scenario, the customer already has 12 developers plus minus sitting around, so they know the project already. So we would love to hire some of them over the project period, and they're basically supporting the Austrian resources. And so all of the people who are going to develop the technology are going to be employed in the Austrian entity for the duration of the project. And then again, the employment in Austria causes the benefit for the government, and the circle is basically closing again. Yeah. So for the money, for the spending, to apply for a grant, we really need to fill out a huge amount of paperwork. That's actually the price what everybody needs to pay for the grant. So the grants are not free. The price you need to pay is a huge amount of paperwork. But on the other hand side, if you want to get 3 million or 6 million from an investor, everybody knows that's also not instant. You also need to do a lot of work. You also need to do a lot of meetings, a lot of pitch decks. Yeah. So in the grant system, it's just filling out a lot of paperwork. And this means we are going to know very, very, very detailed how much money we really know, we really need, how much resources we really need, when do we need these resources, and how much resources are going into what work package and what work plan for this development. Yeah. In the best case scenario or in the worst case scenario, we need not the full budget. Okay, then we just get a little bit less from the grants. And that's it. We just need to report to the grant agency if something major is going to change within the grant program. But I also want to bring up one more thing, because this is something I always want to highlight. When I said we get up to 80% of the grants, this is important. Listen closely, because up to 80%. So the grants cannot cover 100% of the project budget. So in every project, the customer needs to at least finance a little piece of the whole project out of his own pocket, cash flow, investor, bank account, line of credit, whatever. Yeah. Because the grants are never covering 100%. But I mean, who cares if I get a bunch of millions in grants and just need to finance a couple of 100K? It's still a very, very good deal.
All right. Well, I'm going to go back to the same example, and let's say this individual or this company spends $2 million a year currently in R&D.
Mhm.
And as I'm understanding that, if they redirect it to where they're spending $1.6 million with the grant money and 400,000 internally, and then they get in the second year, and using that as an example, we've got a $6 million grant total, and after 2 years, we believe the project to be completed on that stage. Now, I haven't spent the last $2 million. What happens now?
The grants are provided in chunks of annual projects anyway, and within one project, the grant money is distributed in 3 tranches. Yeah,
Okay.
so if there is no work in year number 3 and no money that needs to be spent in year number 3, there is no application for year number 3, and the project is done and finished after 2 years.
All right. And then on the converse of that, if it is like we talked about, rinse and repeat, and I've got a 2 year program, what do I do then? Because I need to do it again.
Yeah, we just apply for an additional grant program. That's what we do normally for our customers anyway. So what we are doing is, typically we work with our customers over a long period of time, at least 5 to 7 years, and we are going to help them to apply for dozens of different grants. Why? Because when we need a 6 million project budget, we need to apply for multiple smaller grants and do something which is called grant stacking. So typically it does not work that we apply for a 6 million project directly, but we apply for a smaller one at the beginning, a little bit a bigger one, and then for a big one, so the third one. But that's the typical grant program anyway. That's also from a practical perspective very good, because you don't need 6 million in day number 1 when you start the project anyway for development. Yeah. Parallel to that, and also for the future, in most situations, based on the development, the customer have a bunch of new ideas, or probably based on the customer feedback, new features need to be developed for the next iteration phase of this technology. Or, like you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, hey, after 1 year or after 2 years, it's outdated anyway, because the rules are changing, the regulations are changing, whatever systems behind the scenes are changing, or even new technologies available. So you need to further develop the technology, because especially in the AI or in the tech world today, if you don't work on your technology, unfortunately 6 months later it's outdated anyway and you are not competitive anymore. So in this case, we just apply for another grant program, for a side grant program, for a future grant program.
Perfect. Well, many of the other clients have fall into the categories we've already talked about, but let me talk about another category, and this is for information for me as well as my potential client that I'd love to take this out to. And they're in the health nutritional business. Now their R&D is health products. They have many products now, a very successful company, been in years for 30 years, but they want to continue developing better products, better distribution of those products. So really it comes into two different areas for them. One is research and development of medical background and information for the products. And then the second one is to how do we better market that product to get it out there? So taking each of those two scenarios, tell me how that company could consider approaching for grants for one or both of those scenarios.
That's a very good question, because this now fits into the third bucket, what I mentioned at the beginning. So I took a couple of notes on the side, because then I can give you much better answers here. So in this case, we would focus on the R&D topic first. So this means we are going to connect this customer with the right research and scientific partners in Austria. This can be a university, this can be a nutrition scientific institution, this can be a research institution, this can be a professor from a university. So again, we are going to bring in the right network, the right network partners in Austria, and they are going to actively source the project partners for them. And then they are going to apply for this grant together. So for example, the research institution and the customer are going to apply for the grant together. The good part here is, because the Austrian research partner or the university is applying for the grant too, it's nearly 100% secure that they get the grant approved immediately. That's a very good part here. And in some situations, they don't even need to set up a company for the first grant application. And then you can do whatever research needed to be done, whatever product development needed to be done, whatever scientific background needed to be done for that. Yeah, so we have a lot of different customers we are supporting from US customers who are doing very similar things with different products and with different goals they need in the research. For the second part, for marketing, now here it gets a little bit tricky. Why? Because the grants are for everything which is not daily business. And marketing is typically considered as this is daily business. This is something what we cannot cover with grants. Here are a couple of examples. If in this scenario the customer sets up a company in Austria, then at some point this company can apply for so-called internationalization grants to expand from Austria all over Europe, or to expand from Austria wherever they want to expand to, whatever country they want to expand to. And then there are, for this internationalization step, even marketing budgets where we can apply for grants. We are not talking about millions anymore. We are talking about low five-figure amounts here. But again, opportunities are here.
All right. Well, I think that pretty well covers it. That's not our primary goal today, but I wanted to share their two areas, and that I think pretty well explains that. So tell me how the next steps of this, if they wanted to get a hold of you, and let's talk about what you do. Now, I have the documents, and Tricia has the documents to share with anybody that wants to connect with us. But how do they get a hold of you and take this out to the next step with Stephan?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the easiest way, and what I always love to do, is I love to jump on a Zoom meeting for 30 minutes, because I want to get to know you, the customer, and I want to know your project. Because what I can do, if you tell me your project, I can normally tell you immediately, yes, we can get grants for that, and this is the path how it is going to look like. Yeah. So this is completely free, no charge, no money, no strings attached. So let's just hop on a Zoom call, and I'm happy to share my contact information here, and I'm also going to share my scheduling link. So that's the absolute easiest way to start with that. And then after this call, then, okay, we can go into details and I can give you very specific answers for the specific project, for the specific type of grant, and on and on and on.
All
Yes.
right. Well, Tricia, I'm going to turn back to you at this point, if I may. And as we were talking a few minutes ago, you and Jeffrey are in the position of doing some incubator work here with Stephan. Tell us what your experience is so far and how you would be able to take any one of these projects and help a company move through there to where they don't have the expense and delays of trying to set up their own company in Austria. Share your experience if you would, please.
Paul, I will say that I am ecstatic about delivering on my personal brand promise and the brand promise of C-Suite Network to see our leaders succeed. And the challenge that we have when we're building our businesses and we're doing something new, something innovative, right? That's the whole point of these grants, is that we end up reinventing the wheel. We start from scratch. We think we've got to sacrifice everything in our lives and every cent we've ever earned and will earn in order to create this new thing that is going to be incredible and exciting. And this is one of those scenarios where, tried, tested, true, it works, it's a process, and we know what those steps are. So I that is the first just huge hurdle. And Paul, Stefan, I know I'm preaching to the converted here, but we meet thousands of business leaders a month, literally, and we're all going through essentially the same challenges. And so to have this resource to say, here's the opportunity, that to me is just absolutely phenomenal. I would love to toss it back to Stefan to say, you have this incredible space that you sit in terms of innovation and seeing people's dreams literally come true, because in business, there's this whole notion that it's about greed and selfishness, etc., if you're not actually doing it. If you're doing it, most of us really want to be able to serve our communities. We want to see our business success create outrageous impact and success with those we serve, and the communities that we serve within. So, Stefan, I'd love for you to share what you're most excited about right now. Like what do you see as the sort of game-changing, innovations and opportunities that we're able to create using this kind of, channel and opportunity for supporting that scaling and growth?
Absolutely. Thank you, Trisha. So it's pretty easy to be excited. Why? Because every single day I hear about unfreaking believable new ideas. And whatever is going outside and the media and the negative news and all this is telling, when I listening to these projects, I gain a bunch of faith in in mankind again, because the type of projects what a lot of entrepreneurs are working on behind the scenes, behind the curtains, is unfreaking believable. So let me give you just a couple of examples. We cannot talk about details because of the confidential situation, because we treat every project very, very, very highly secured from NDA and confidential perspective. But in general, I can give you a couple of ideas. One idea, what I'm personally extremely excited about, is we have a customer and they invented a new way on how they combine solar and wind energy in a new way. And on the same size of land, they are getting 400% more power out. 400% more on the same size of land, which is amazing. Another thing in the renewable energy, they invented a technology which looks like a shipping container with a bunch of extras. And you basically can put this shipping container right into the desert. You start it with external energy just once, and then it's completely self-sustainable, and you have just two outcomes: clean energy and clean water, which sounds ridiculous, but it's working in the laboratory, and now they are building it in real life model. Yeah. Other example, a couple of startups are using these grant opportunities. And we all know when you have a napkin idea, the founder or the inventor is normally hyper excited. But then when you go with this napkin idea, pre-revenue, without customers, without anything to potential investors, what's going to happen? Your company valuation is going to suck because it's going to be very low. And if you really want to have an investor, you need to give away a lot of equity, and maybe you are already losing control of your own idea because you just have a napkin. So we help a bunch of founders in this phase that they apply for the grants, and now they suddenly have a government-backed grant in their hands with a couple of 100K or even a couple of million. And now they are going back to a potential investor. And guess what is happening with the company valuation? And guess what is happening with the equity they need to give away? So suddenly they are not talking about 90% of equity they are going to give away for 200K or something like that. Probably they are talking about 10% equity or 15% equity for 2 millions they are getting from the investor. Yeah. So this is what's very, very exciting, especially with a couple of young entrepreneurs. And a couple of weeks ago, we had a mastermind here in Sardinia, and we had startup founders in this phase here, and they are also using these grant programs. And it's really amazing to see what they are doing. On another side, two more super short examples. One company is into stem cells, and they can create stem cells for everything which is broken in our body. They can create a stem cell for your left eye. They can create a stem cell for your right pinky. They can create a stem cell for your heart, for your liver, for your knees. That's unfreaking believable what they can do. And they are going to need, of course, a lot of scientific background and a lot of trial behind the scenes. One more thing in this area, in this space, I love this because they invented a new treatment method for spine disease. And when you have already a situation that you are able to move again and that you are able to exercise again and to use your body again and to use your legs again and all these things. So these are things I always get goosebumps when I think about these projects, because that's so amazing what's coming our way. And that's besides what we are doing, of course, as a business model. But besides all of that, it's just unbelievable to support projects like that on the way.
I love this too, Paul, because Stefan just shared that specific example. And every time we speak, I'm like, oh, I have a business owner that I've been working with that has a biotech solution that has incredible challenges, and why haven't I connected him with you yet? So anyway,
Trust me, I'm having that same scenario right here of people that
no.
I've talked to and currently talking to. So I appreciate that. And I'm going to kind of
Hmm.
rapid fire what I understand that you were able to pull together in this wrap up here. Your services include custom software and platform development, number one, AI solutions and automation tools to complement that, CRM integration and marketing automation of that project to go through while you're also prototyping and MVP development of getting the final product. And then ongoing technical support and maintenance all comes through the efforts that you're doing with these grants. Is there anything else you'd
Yes.
want to add to that as we begin to wrap up here?
No, absolutely. That's a very good summary. So in general, we have the opportunity to develop these things, and we have the opportunity to get grants. And for projects where there is no IT or software development necessary, like this biotech or this sustainable energy, we just support with the grants, and that's how we can help and how we work together. Yes.
Well, I appreciate that. Tricia, is there any other wrap up thoughts that you have here as we close our opportunity today?
Well, I guess what I would say, Paul, is I can't even say how many conversations Stefan and I have had about the opportunities here and how many people we have working through the different grants, and so on. And I'm still coming up with new ideas every time we speak. So if it doesn't cost anything to have a conversation, and I think that's the most important thing. This is one avenue that if you haven't explored it, a tremendous opportunity, and it's not going to hurt to have that conversation with Stefan and move that forward. And Paul, as always, thank you for creating such incredible content, because this is where we learn from each other, right? These are different opportunities that are out there, and half of winning, I think, in business is just knowing who your friends are and the different things that you can explore. And if it works for you, fantastic. If it doesn't, you can move quickly to other things and know that you're in control of that. And as I said, I think that's at least 50% of winning the game when you're an entrepreneur.